You're watching 16 News Now Digital Plus's 16 Sports Extra, brought to you by Gates Automotive.
Welcome to 16 Sports Extra. I'm your host, Jackson Neal, sports coordinator for WNDU. That is Austin Hough, South Bend Tribune's prep sports reporter, and that is Sabrina Hoover, WNDU's sports reporter. We're going to be talking about all high school sports things here in Mishawaka.
All the small things, but not really.
Okay, that's the.
Okay.
Is that how we're starting this
No,
now?
I don't know, man. You just said all the. You said all the sports things, and I'm like, all the small things.
I didn't even think of it like that.
Say it ain't so.
Exactly.
Well, I was gonna say they've seen our faces with all these high school football previews, but now we had week one. We kind of saw some storylines shake up.
We have tangible things to talk
We
about,
actually
which is
can
like
talk
the
about
best
some
part
things.
of things to talk about instead of guessing who's going to be good.
Exactly.
Of course, yeah. So we had week one in Indiana last Friday night. Week one in Michigan is not until this Thursday and Friday, kind of a weird scheduling thing there with Labor Day. But we're going to talk about mainly week one in Indiana. And I kind of want to start this off by going around the table and just asking each of you biggest takeaways, biggest thing you guys noticed. Austin, starting with you, biggest thing from Friday night.
The biggest thing from Friday night, I would say, was Penn. It's an easy answer, but I don't think we didn't know, right? We knew the Penn's got talent. Of course they have talent. They always have talent. But you have so many new faces. How are they going to all come together? And holy cow, Kell Watson. If he's not the fastest athlete in the state, he's one of the 5 fastest players in the state. 4 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. Tyshawn Bardo picked up major Power 5 offers from Louisville and Vanderbilt over the weekend. So, he's one game all of a sudden elevated his stock from MAC to, Power 5, Power 4. Sorry, Power 5 is going to be hard not to say anymore. But here you go. Kell Watson, though.
Yeah,
he was the star of the
touchdown
show. You can literally see him hit the next gear when he was running. He got around the corner. There's the next gear. He just was incredible. He was the best athlete on the field. And when you have the best athlete on the field, you have a chance to win a lot of games. So that to me was, holy cow, Penn is for real. This is a real team, at least after week one.
I mean, 49 points in week one. That's their offense.
Now they gave up 42, so maybe we got to be a little worried about the defense.
But 49 in week one for an offense, that's pretty good. That's pretty good to start
I'm going to say that.
I was going to say with Pete Reardon, we've talked about, obviously replacing Corey Yeoman and Giesman, but whenever I sat down with him with the one-on-one, you could tell he's learned a lot from both of those men, and this was a really, important week one for him, especially getting his feet on the ground, and, I think it was probably a big challenge for him, but it'll be interesting how he goes from now on.
Of course.
Jackson, anything catch your eye?
I was going to go to Sabrina actually next.
Oh, I thought that was Sabrina's answer. Sorry,
no, I was just piggybacking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm the host over here.
I'm sorry, Jackson.
All right, Sabrina, what was the biggest thing that caught your eye? We know you were at the Mishawaka Marian game.
I was going to say, I was at the Mishawaka Marian game, and I have to say that would be my answer. Caden O'Neal, 3 rushing touchdowns, I believe. It's a young offense. We talked about it in our previews. We knew that the defense would be solid, but the offensive side was a little bit of a question mark. So to see, them come back in the second half, I think said a lot about that team in week one, especially going up against a veteran team like Marian. And then obviously Keith Kinder was pretty happy about that, as you guys saw in our pregame show, or in our Friday show. But it seemed like they were focused in the second half, and I really, again, just like Keith said, that's all about talks about a good team is how they can respond in those kind of situations.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Sabrina, I agree. They 17-7 down at half, maybe a team, not that they're going to pack it in. It's not an insurmountable lead, but wasn't looking pretty there for Mishawaka, and the fact that they bounced back the way they did in the second half, you could tell that's a well-coached team. This is a program that's been in this spot numerous times. They weren't going to be fazed by the moment, even with those sophomores and juniors who have not started a lot of games playing on offense. So kudos to him. And that second half, combined with what Penn did all Friday night, backyard brawl this week is going to be electric.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
First game on the new turf field at Steel Stadium as well.
Oh yeah.
And Mishawaka starting with a couple rivalry games to start the season. That's always fun.
They always do. Yeah, that's been a nice last 2 years, right? Marian and Penn first 2 weeks before we played the NLC. These non-conference games are in theory to get you ready for a conference run and prepare you ultimately for the postseason. So you can't really pick two better teams to get you more amped up. Those are high emotion games for Mishawaka. Go Marian and then Penn.
Of course, and for my big take.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go, Jackson.
I was gonna say I'm a
Jackson's
gracious
takeaway.
host. I let everyone else go first, and it's my take. My big take. We've talked about this. The new quarterbacks in the area. There's so many brand new quarterbacks. Whether it was we talked about Penn, Kell Watson making great plays. If you go somewhere like New Prairie, Reed Robinson, he made a couple plays. They got a win. Northwood bringing back has a new quarterback. They get a big win over Jimtown. You're just seeing all this new talent at the quarterback position specifically. And some of these teams had these question marks. We know they're historical programs. They do a lot. They're always really good, it seems. Well, yeah, they got the next guy up at that specific position.
Right. Yeah. The word I kept coming back to thinking about New Prairie was a very workman-like performance from them. They did what they needed to beat LaPorte. They looked strong. There wasn't any concern. Last year they lost to LaPorte, which was like a holy cow, what's going on here? Sky is falling kind of moment. But they looked the part this year, and they play Goshen this week. So I'm not going to say 2-0, but it feels trending in that direction. So again, New Prairie, Northwood, Mishawaka, Penn. Those are kind of like the four programs that have they don't rebuild, they reload. Right, that cliche. Those are the four that have kind of earned the right to say that in the last 10, 15 years. And that's what they exactly, here they come. Everyone has, all four of them have a new quarterback. All four won by double digits, or Penn won by 7. But yeah, it's like, okay, here we go. There they are again.
2024, we're right back at it, basically.
Yeah, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. You know what I mean? So.
And Reed Robinson, he was the running back.
Yeah, he was running back last year. He's a great athlete, man. He's going to play Division I baseball wherever he wants. So it's not a surprise that they were, pretty good in week 1.
And then one of the other games we haven't touched on yet, Concord Elkart, our 16 sports game of the week. And Sabrina, I want to go to you because you spoke with Concord's coach right before this game, and then 13-12 win. Just what your thoughts?
Yeah, no, the very close one. We talked about it in our 16 Sports Extra show, but obviously when talking to him, he knew it was going to be a tough battle going up against the Elkart's defensive line. Concord had Jaron Thomas, a powerful weapon there, but they also turned to other guys than just Jaron in the backfield, and so it was a gritty game. Obviously not a pretty game, but a win is a win, and obviously there's a lot to correct on both sides of the ball, but honestly a really, really big one for Concord for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't hit the panic button yet if I was Elkart. Concord is a really strong 5A program historically, and this year too, that both defenses played well. It really came down to the special teams. I wrote about that at South Bend Tribune, but Concord made all 3 of their kicks, and Elkart missed their 2 PATs. The offense has kind of played similarly in the game. The defense has played similarly in the game. And then just kind of, ultimately just sometimes the ball, literally bounces a certain way. Like the first PAT hit the upright for Elkart. The second one went just to the right. If you're combined 18 inches away from, winning that football game, and you're sitting here 1-0, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, here's Elkart, 1-0. So, so it's tough, but that's just how football goes sometimes. So I wouldn't be too worried about it if I'm Elkart.
And I do want to ask Austin a question. Both of them are the few local teams with the returning starting quarterback. What was your impression of both of those quarterbacks? Yeah,
they both looked a little shaky at times. They both threw interceptions that you watched them and you're like, where were they trying to do with that? What were they doing with that ball? They were trying to throw the ball there. Bo Brunner ripped off the 48-yard touchdown run that was the game-winning touchdown for Concord ultimately. And Quinn Ross had some nice moments as well. Both teams wanted to run the ball a lot. You didn't see as many throws from each quarterback maybe as you would expect from these guys being returning starters, but both teams were committed to the run. The defenses were there to stand up and be good against that as well. So it just ended up being one big play for Brunner, and Ross did okay, but it'll get better, I'm sure, over time.
Of course, it's always those big plays. It's always those a couple of big plays. I feel like, especially in these games, are deciding things early in the season. Especially week 1, maybe miscommunication on the defense. Who can kind of take advantage of that as an offense? Yeah,
it was a perfect read option play for Brunner to run it. He basically went 48 yards untouched for the touchdown. So I like Concord a lot. They're an NLC, man, with Warsaw and Mishawaka. It's going to be really tough, but should be a fun. Couple, once the NLC play starts, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what they do.
Of course. Now I want to switch the attention let's go to the South Bend schools. It was an okay night, up and down, I would say. I think we should start with Riley, whose defense it looks pretty good.
4 safeties in a
I
game.
was going to say, I don't know.
You look at 35-0 on paper and you're like, oh, they scored 5 touchdowns, kind of a boring win. No, they like set a state record, 4 safeties in the win, which is crazy to think about. So, I mean, kudos to them. Murray Jackson had 2 of them. He had 13 tackles for loss. He's a sophomore. 2 safeties, 13 tackles. Welcome to the high school football. You know what I mean? Like, what a performance. Now, is Hammond Central they played Hammond Knoll. Sorry, Hammond Knoll. Are they the hardest team in the world to beat? No, admittedly. But 35-0, Riley had another one of those teams. Riley had a lot of question marks coming in. What were they going to look like? Basically, a whole new team compared to what last year's group was. And they, very, very dominantly won that game. So kudos to Darkley for getting his group ready to go. They're going to have a bunch of new stars, new faces kind of standing out. So it's impressive. They were the only South Bend team to win. Adams and Washington and St. Joe all lost. So Riley is the current kings of South Bend in terms of high school football. So
I like, Austin, not to cut you off, but I like what you said in one of your articles. You called Riley the wild card conference.
Yeah, the wild card in the conference. They are, because it's like, are they going to be, because like you look at the NIC, it's like, okay, Penn is there, right? Penn's there. We think Elkart's going to be there. Again, they easily could be 1-0. They scored more touchdowns than Concord on Friday night. They could easily be 1-0. And then you kind of have like Marian St. Joe lurking. Riley is like, if they develop that talent, they could be that, fourth. Probably New Prairie 3. Forgot about New Prairie. I always forget sometimes New Prairie's in the NIC. They're in the NIC. I promise I did not forget you Cougars fans. But, Riley could easily be the 4th team in there. If they could, it's not out of the possibility to beat St. Joe or beat a Marian this year. Like, Washington and Adams are kind of rebuilding and reloading up. So, Riley could be one of those, surprise air quote teams at the end where they're 5-4 or 6-3, potentially at the end of the year, which maybe we didn't think that record could be attainable, preseason.
And we saw that last year with them going 8-1 in the regular season before the postseason.
And unfortunately and fortunately for Riley, everything is going to come down to that postseason now because like we saw him do the great regular season last year and then just completely, not choke, but they lost to a 1-8 team in the first round of the playoffs. Like this is a statement playoff year almost, depending on what the draw is. Now, obviously, they could get a bad draw and then you lose another playoff game, and it is what it is. But, it feels like everything is kind of building to a redemption-ish arc for Riley for that week 1 postseason game.
That's where, everyone's going to be focused on that. And you kind of mentioned that they're also the South Bend St. Joseph losing 21-20 to Lakeland.
Yeah.
They were down early. They came back, made it a game, almost won that. Sabrina, I want to turn to you. You spent some time with St. Joe before the season. I know it's a senior team.
Oh, very senior heavy, yeah.
Even though they didn't win this first game, I mean, what should their outlook be, I guess, going forward?
Yeah, it's weird because, obviously the head coach, this is his 3rd year, but he from coming back to the program, and, they haven't had a winning season since 2018, so obviously I know he has a lot to work with this team, but very, very confident, obviously, as a head coach would be before the first game of the season. But besides being senior heavy, a lot of energy on this team. It seemed like they were packed with a lot of that. Like a lot of them had confidence going into the season, and obviously with the quarterback battle going on as well, a lot of the guys had confidence with the leading men, and a lot of communication on both sides of the ball. So obviously, it's a tough one, but I don't think they're going to have any trouble, especially knowing what they have on the team, especially with all the seniors and the veterans.
And they, they could have potentially won this game on Friday. They had a sportsmanlike conduct penalty called on them after they scored the touchdown to make it 21-20. Some of the guys on the sideline went on the field to celebrate, and that's a penalty. So now you're kicking the extra point from the 30-yard line instead of the 3 or whatever. Obviously, like, who knows? Maybe they still missed the extra point, but they were 2 for 2 on the night in extra points to that point. So maybe they, but so St. Joe, and then Lakeland is the team they played. Lakeland is a sneaky, like they historically maybe aren't this program that everyone looks at, but like they've got a quarterback he's been getting some college interest in Braden Holbrook, and that's a younger, like an up and coming team that has been building this for a few years under their coach Ryan O'Shea. So it's not the worst loss in the world for St. Joe. This wasn't like a, whoa, what happened here? Like, wave the, flag, like right flag, not right flag, like, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
concerned.
Yeah, there was, I like saw 21-20 and I wasn't like, oh, that's a bad loss. Like, Lakeland's a good team this year, I think. I think at least. And so, I wouldn't be nervous yet. They're going to play Fort Wayne South this week. They're probably favored in that game. And then you get to play New Prairie week 3. So, here we go.
Another test.
And Marian week 4. So, this is, no gimmies first couple weeks of NIC play there.
And you talk about St. Joe, you mentioned Marian, you have to almost talk about those two schools.
Yeah,
and it's just so
they're not allowed to be in different sentences.
Yeah, they have to
be in the same sentence.
You always have to bring those two up, and it's just so crazy to look at those two rosters and those two teams. It's such similar storylines this season. 20-some seniors for each team. Haven't maybe had the success they wanted to recently, but have that kind of history of some success. It's really going to be interesting to see these two programs, these two rivals, have a very similar kind of, I feel like, collision course. Maybe they didn't have the week 1 they wanted, but with this type of seniority, they're going to turn that around.
Exactly. Yeah, I 100% agree.
And then one other thing I want to touch on from week 1, Austin, I know we were there together. John Glenn coming into this season, new head coach situation, crazy off season. And it started off with a 10-point win. Yeah,
they are how Riley is the wild card of the NIC. John Glenn is the wild card of the INSC, the new INSC. 10-point win over Boone Grove is a good victory for them, I would say. Interesting test week 2 with Edwardsburg, Michigan school that has historically been strong. They were, Edwardsburg still made the playoffs in Michigan last year, but Edwardsburg was going to the Final Four of the state championship every year for, 5-6 years before last season. So this is a program that historically has been there. So it's a really interesting test, I feel like, for Glenn week 2, because it's a fun game. It's a fun interstate game. But yeah, Brady Benwell, the quarterback, or Braden Benwell, he rushed for 150 yards. He threw a couple touchdowns. He ran for a touchdown, threw another. So they are, kind of like this anomaly almost. I think we're going to really find out more about them this week, and maybe Edwardsburg being at their first game, Glenn can kind of capitalize on some of that, like, Edwardsburg trying to figure out what they are. This is a Glenn team that could easily, be in the mix. It's a hard conference, but, Knox lost to North Judson by 3 scores, which is a good loss. North Judson's really good, obviously, but, it's not... it's not this impossible conference.
Yeah,
it's a good conference, but it's not impossible. It could be, the path could be there potentially.
Yeah, it's not
for the
insurmountable.
Falcons. Yeah,
definitely. So now, that was week 1. Still just the first week.
I know I mentioned all these week 2 games.
Did we talk about Northwood? No.
We did a little bit. Yeah, Micah
Gerald.
Micah Gerald might be a star.
Okay,
he might be a star.
Oh wait, yeah, I guess we did talk a little bit about that.
I'll just
any more thoughts, Sabrina?
No, Northwood?
On Northwood, yeah. If you want to...
You brought him up.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I don't know. It was weird because obviously knowing when we did the preview stuff, talking to Nate Andrews, a lot of guys, a lot of replacement, and young squad. So it was really interesting to see how they did week 1. Not saying, it was a big victory, but it was... a good week 1 victory with all the young guys that was taking possibly.
And they got lucky in the sense that Jimtown is also a new new head coach at Jimtown. They're trying to figure some stuff out. They might be kind of in a rebuilding form. But Micah Gerald, man, you look at his total numbers from Friday night. The new quarterback for Northwood, he had 166 passing and 3 touchdowns and 140 rushing and a touchdown.
It's pretty good.
Kind of looks like Owen Rader's numbers from last year, doesn't it? 300 total yards of offense, 4 touchdowns. That kind of looked like Owen Rader, right?
It's kind of those numbers very much remind me of that Owen Rader during that run.
We talked about in our preview what made a good quality quarterback for this Northwood team, and you talked a lot about just what statistically how they or historically how they have been in the past.
Well, and Nate Andrews does a great job of adapting. My first year up here, 2018, Bronson Yoder was a Mr. Football candidate. They ran him as much as any runner in the state. He was basically a running back as quarterback. He threw a little bit, obviously, but you look at his rushing totals from that senior season, you would have thought he was a running back. He actually played quarterback. And then Owen Rader, comes along. Hey, now Owen could run. Owen did run. The Leo semi-state game, he was running circles around Leo. They couldn't handle. They didn't know what a read option looked like.
He showed off his legs in that.
But Owen is the all-time leading passer at Northwood. You know what I mean? So his arm was his talent primarily, and his legs were great too. But Nate adapted the offense. They threw more with Owen Rader as quarterback as opposed to Bronson Yoder. And now you have this Micah Gerald kid coming in. It looks like he's kind of more of a hybrid guy as well. That is a great weapon to have as your quarterback. And I think I was a little surprised they started him over Ransberger, a sophomore over the junior, because Ransberger has been on that, best, another extra year in that system. But, I mean, Gerald proved a lot of people, like, I don't want to say wrong, because we didn't know what to think, about him. So I guess wrong in the sense that we had no opinion. Now we have an opinion of, like, hey, this kid might be. Yeah. They get a 6A team this week. We'll talk about this week. I won't get ahead of myself there. Let's talk about this week. That is my very next. I mean, you can talk about it now if you want.
But just like you said, Northwood is Northwood. Like we keep saying that, but
Northwood's also one of those programs that aren't the right.
Nate Andrews is going to have that team ready. I don't care what players you give him. Yeah. He is going to have that program ready.
What about me? A quarterback.
That's probably the one player I would say.
The one player.
Yeah, I would say no. That's
I agree actually.
Even Nate Andrews can't save you, Austin.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I walked on the Stairmaster for like 5 minutes today, and I'm out. So can't feel my quads.
So as long as Nate Andrews doesn't have Austin Huff as his quarterback, I think
he should be fine.
Northwood has plenty more talent.
He's much better with Austin Huff as his journalist covering the team as his quarterback.
Yeah. All right, enough of that. How about let's week 2? This is still just week 1. Week 2 is about to get going. Yeah. Week 1 in Michigan, just overall thoughts, things you guys are going to be looking for in the second week of games. I guess
Sabrina can start that. Let Sabrina take, unless you want me to.
You kick it off.
Okay, I'll kick it off. Well,
you are the guest.
It's hard.
You are the guest.
I mean, if I'm on this every week, does that make me a guest?
Well, we're recording this in WNDU, so.
Let me pull up the schedule just to refresh. But I mean, come on, there's one game at the top of the list. It's Penn and Mishawaka. Come on, it's a rivalry game.
That was gonna be mine, but hey, I'll pick it up.
That's why I wanted you to go first, so I could piggyback off that. I mentioned it. Edwardsburg and Glenn is a kind of a fun game. It's a fun interstate game. It feels like it's going to be an even contest. In Michigan, Niles and St. Joseph could be a fun game as well. Niles is coming off this historic year for them. They won a district championship, I think for the first time either ever or in a long time. It's been a minute since they've won a district title, and they've got about like half the team back. Like a lot of those, like 2 of the 4 main running backs, they had like a 4-headed machine running back, including the quarterback. So they had a lot of guys with a lot of experience. Scott Shaw's done a great job of putting that system in place, and so I love that game. Just kind of look at Northridge Elkart's an interesting. Northridge 0-1, Elkart 0-1. Both teams are going to be desperate to kind of get off the schneid there. Riley going out to Fort Wayne. Let's see if they can build off that.
Love that name.
Fort Wayne.
Fort Wayne. Love doing graphics.
The Generals. Northwood is an interesting game because Portage is a 6A school, but Portage has been like bad for they went 0-10 last year. Northwood beat Portage, but Portage won its first week game. So they have it snapped an 11 game overall losing streak for Portage. So interesting, kind of like, I think Northwood is the favorite, but it's a 6A school, so in theory, like, Northwood shouldn't be the favorite. Like, you go by the numbers. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's a sneaky game, but it could be an interesting game. Like, I still think Northwood will win, but Portage looks like they are better than they were last year, which is a good start. I mean, they literally could not have been any worse. And so they are by default better this year because they've won 1 game. But yes, so those were some of the games that kind of stuck out to me. There's a couple of other 1A games as well. I don't know if they're on Sabrina's radar, but there are a couple 1A games I'm looking at too that, or 1A, 2A games that
I think I know it's on Sabrina's radar, and you mentioned at the start the Penn.
I was literally about to. Yeah. Well, since we all kind of can talk about that one, Mishawaka Penn, I do have a question for Austin with that game because it's like I saw how Mishawaka, came back and how they've, battled through resilience, obviously, and then with Pete Reardon getting that close 49-42 win. What do those 2 programs, I guess, what are you expecting to see Friday night with those 2 programs?
It's going to be electric. So Mishawaka's defense coming into the year, we thought this was going to maybe be the best unit either side of the ball across any team, the Mishawaka defense, because they were so good like last year, and they basically had everyone back. So it was like, okay, like maybe this is a great defensive unit. And they only gave up 24 points to Marian. So if we're going by like what we think, which is Mishawaka has a great defense, and what we saw Penn's offense last week, like the irresistible force and the immovable object, right? Like that's going to be the matchup that I'm looking forward to the most, because how does, Mishawaka slow down a Kell Watson or a Tyshawn Barta? Like Jackson Snyder is going to probably have to play the game of his life, for them to have a chance to win this game. Not saying they don't have a chance. Like Mishawaka definitely has a chance to win this game. They are not. I mean, they're the underdog, but they're by no means like a far away. Like, oh, Penn's got this for sure. Like,
and they showed it against Marian.
Yeah. So there's just so many like storylines and drama and like it's just I don't know, man. This just feels like. Last year going into it with a lot of hype as well, and I'd probably have the same thoughts going into last year's game, but I am actually a little more excited for this year.
I mean, I'm just looking at that Penn defense.
Yeah.
42.
Can they stop anyone?
They took a bit, they kind of pulled in front of Valpo there for a little bit. Look like this game's going to be, in hand. All of a sudden you check in the score, Valpo scores another touchdown. They're back in this game, and we, like you said, you saw Mishawaka put up 41 points last week.
Yeah. And look, like stopping the triple option that Mishawaka does is hard. Like last year's game, the final score was 28-7, but Mishawaka, granted, different team, different players, but they were able to move the ball down the field pretty much every drive, and then it was a self-inflicted wound, whether it be a pick or a fumble. I believe there was it was like a pick six that really kind of sealed the ending. So Mishawaka, like at least the coaches know like we can move the ball, and that was a really good Penn defense last year. Like that was an elite defense, and like so they know we can move the ball against Penn. It's a matter of finishing the drives. Like can they not make the mistake? And that's how you can't make mistakes when you're playing a team like Penn. Like that's just there's very few in the state that can get away with mistakes against Penn. Yeah. And as great as Mishawaka is, they can't, because we saw last year they had like 3 or 4 turnovers. They lost the game 28-7. Could have easily been a tie game or a 1-score game going into the fourth quarter instead of being a 2-score game, and then the pick six sealed it. So, it's not an easy offense, especially when it's ran at a high level to stop. So that is also it's good point you bring up there.
And with
so
Penn's defense, what was it? Kellen's younger brother that stopped.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Watson brothers.
Yeah.
I joked with someone. I wish his last name was Holmes because we got on Holmes and Watson, but it's unfortunate. So
these jokes.
That's a good one.
We start and we're gonna end with the joke right there.
Wait, we do have buttons.
We do have buttons here.
We have buttons.
I'm pretty sure we have a button.
Oh, there we go.
Do like the boo. I think there's a boo or something, or a tomato. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, there's got to be. Oh, here we go.
More like.
Yeah. That's,
you ready? You ready? More like Holmes and Watson. Am I right?
Yeah, that's.
There you go.
Those coming next week,
that's
y'all.
that's the next level of production you get here at WNDU Studios.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so that's gonna wrap it up for week 1. We'll come back here for week 2 for all your week 2 coverage. Check out 16 Sports Xtra on Friday night. Then Austin's work in the South Bend Tribune.
Yes.
And all of your other high school.
Our full staff going, Friday nights. We'll have coverage.
Football.
We will have coverage of Penn Mishawaka, of course.
Of course.
The Edwardsburg John Glenn game, and also North Judson at LaVille.
Oh.
So that's one game I forgot to mention. North Judson, who I believe will be number 1 in 1A after their win over Knox. LaVille coming off a tough loss to Triton. Are they 100% healthy? I'm not like confident. It looked like Cody Allen might not have played, which would be a big difference for LaVille. So that's an intriguing little 1A game going on down there in Lakeville. So
sounds good.
Well, thank you, Austin, for being
thanks,
here.
Sabrina. I guess I'll come back next week if you'll have me.
Sounds good. That's the plan.
We'll see. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's been 16 Sports Xtra with the South Bend Tribune. Thanks so much for listening and watching.